now we'll have a session by Vincent Fabre-Nicolin. He works at the ESRF for a few years now, and he is the group head for the algorithms and data analysis group at the experiments division. It's written there. I could have checked it. So, Vincent, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jordi, and thanks everybody for being here. So I'm very happy to welcome you for this PaNOSC Closing Event. So this is a second welcome for everyone who was already here this morning. And so Andy asked me to give a welcome and also a very short comments or perspective from a scientific point of view. So I will just say a few things about why I think PaNOSC is really important from a scientific but also from a software developer point of view. So I will tell you a few things that I had when I first heard about the European Open Science Cloud. So I had a few dreams of what could be done because as a lot of people, I was already using some cloud resources like Amazon or cloud platform. And I thought, okay, if you have some European resources, then we can give up all those and then we can move to the European, for instance, Science Cloud. And ideally, you would want something like these clouds and have some ubiquitous access to data and compute resources, and also the ability to standardize remote access to compute resources. And of course, open data for open science, because otherwise, without open data, we will not have a very fruitful experience. Of course, we didn't get all of that because, well, large data transfers are not magical. I mean, there are still limits on what we can reasonably do. And of course, there's a lack of economical model for all the resources. But what is really important in this project, PaNOSC, and all the sister projects like ExPaNDS, is that we now have all the essential tools and bricks which are available, and we have to exploit them. And these are really important. One of the things which is very important is, of course, open science and open data. And if you Google for open data today, I mean, you can end up with something like this, like a FIFA World Cup 2022 API, which looks good because it means that there's open data for football as well. But not quite true, because if you look down, then there's pricing and contact us. And then if you really search for open data, you end up to something like this, okay, on the Qatar government website. So, okay, let's forget about football. We can replace this with something which is more useful. So you have lots of recommendations for open data. This is the UNESCO paper. Or if you go a bit further back, if you look into the philosophy of sciences, I mean, with what Karl Popper wrote in Logic der Forschung, so non-reproducible single occurrences are of no significance to science, which means that having data to base our science is absolutely essential. So we need to keep our data, to create our data, and make it available to all. And this is really an essential step today, because if we take a step back and in today's world, I think we can be a bit disappointed in the current world, in the fact that it is less enlightened than what we would have hoped from this open information era in which we are today, because we live with things like alternate fakes, filter bubbles, and so on. And this is quite frustrating for anyone, but especially for scientists. So we can't solve all of those, but as a scientist and as everyone working in a scientific institution, we have a duty to increase the trust in scientific outputs. And the cornerstone for that is really open, reliable, and fair data. And this is what PaNOSC is all about. And this is what this project really helps to. So we have made lots of progress in this direction with open science, open data. So our institutions since the 2010s have increased and implemented open science policies, ESY, ESRF, European ExPaNDS, and all the others. We now have data portals, so this is my landing page, I think, for the ESRF data portal. So there's also now the federated data portal, which is even better because you can search open data anywhere. And you have also data which is well organized using HDF5, or this is an example for the current X-ray imaging, which is my field, and which is very nice. It's still painful for some communities, and we have to take this into account in our software, but still it's there, and it will help in the future to reuse the data. Now, if you look in more details about what's really available, there are still a few issues. So this is the statistics over the last 7 days on the ESRF data portal, and you see that there's about 100 terabytes of data. And what's not so nice is that among these 100 terabytes, there's 21 terabytes, which is electron microscopy, so good for biologists, it's tagged. But there's, well, 62 gigabytes, 62 terabytes of unknown and 16 terabytes of undefined. So this is not so good, and there are over a few small ones which are actually tagged. So there's still lots of things to do, and fair formats and their implementation have a long way to go. Now this is not an entirely fair representation, because it would be easy to tag at least half of those, which is actually tomography. But still, if you try to find metadata in all our published data, there's still lots of information which is missing to make the data actually useful, and we have to work really on that. So in the next decade, we can expect that there will be a large increase in big data analysis, so combining many independent experiments, which is not something that we can do today. So we can use this to feed open data to machine learning algorithms, or to more classical ones. And then we will find, well, I don't know what. This is terra incognita.
1 minute.
Yeah. So we need to work on fair open data formats with the scientific community. And what is very important is this particular step. So we have to work through conferences or through scientific bodies like EOSC has done so wonderfully during the past, 20, 30 years. And then we need to implement it on instruments. That's a big next step. Another thing I want to mention, of course, is that we want to be able to perform remote data viewing and analysis. And this has progressed immensely during PaNOSC, because we have VISA. There are tools like H5 Web. There are other tools which are related, not necessarily during PaNOSC, but toolkits and widgets for desktop and web data analysis in Python, which means it's scientist friendly. So this makes analysis much easier for all kinds of scientists. And if I go back to my EOSC dreams, the original one, what I wanted originally is just to have something like this. You type EOSC.eu, you put a DOI for your data set, and, oh, sorry, that's my, and then everything collapses. That's my fault, sorry. And then you end up, you can do this from anywhere, Earth, just give a DOI, and then you instantaneously get something like this with on an instance which is instantiated by your institution or another. And then you can analyze and develop directly. So it's not that transparent. We don't have also an economical model for the instances. But most tools are there, and this is really a great step forward. And now we need to exploit those. And there's training material as well. So sorry, I missed. So one thing which is important, I didn't do anything this time. Cloud resources to be adopted by researchers really need to be simple enough. So, because we don't want to be applying for non-big compute resources. And they need also to be ubiquitous enough so that scientific software developers will adopt them. If they only have some type of resources when they go to a synchrotron, they're not going to adopt them. They need to be able to use them in their facilities as well. So, again, this was just a few comments from a scientific point of view. So this is the PaNOSC closing event. You see, electricity costs, but now this is the time when the exploitation is really going to begin. And this is where the fun is going to really be. And I think also that this is where the scientific community, the researchers, will have to be more involved in all the different tools so that they can be exploited. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all the developments. And I also want to give a very big thanks to Andy Götz for being the chef d'orchestre in all this project, because I know this has been a huge work for him, and I think we're all very thankful for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And now I think that we will have Andy again, but any questions for Vincent or any comments? People, I think, that calm down a little bit after lunch, or they missed one slide from you, maybe from your end. But Andy, I think you can start preparing with the microphone while we solve some technical issues, because what is life without technical issues?
Okay, so yes, you have to endure me again for 20 minutes.
And no more.
And yeah, I was, I'm going to try and make this a little bit more interactive than I usually do, and maybe I miss maybe some of the highlights, but I'll try and mention some things about that you might not know about the highlights, because we've mentioned them a few times already. Vincent already mentioned a few of them. First of all, I wanted to say that for 4 years, I had this as my Bible. You know, this is the grant agreement for the proposal, and you kept on going back to it, checking that. And thanks to Nicoletta, I now have this. That's all I need. Yeah, I can throw this away, and actually, all of this has been reduced to this tiny book here. yeah. So this is all you need to read, actually. Yeah. So yes, without further suspense, so that you've seen this list. I think most of you have seen this list a few times, and I wanted to, or maybe too many times, and I'm going to highlight a few of them, of things that were worked on by you. So it's not my work, it's your work that I'm going to be reproducing or expanding on here. But before doing that, I also wanted to say this last bit here, which is communication and management. You know, we're talking all about technical stuff here. And these two people here, Jordi, who was the project manager, played. Without Jordi, this wouldn't have been possible. He did an enormous amount of work making sure all of the deliverables were on time, hosting people. So a big hand of applause for Jordi. And Nicoletta, who did all the communication. Yeah, so also you've done an excellent job. And I thought if you could go to the website that for PaNOSC, you know, many of the things actually, it's really when I go to the news, for instance, there's just so much information that she's always putting up there of your work. And I think, you know, it's really, I actually find out things sometimes by just going there. And I think I can recommend you to just go and browse through this and click on some of these items, because you will see some of the things that were done. I mean, there's just a huge amount of work behind this from you, but also Nicoletta putting this up so that people could make this available. There you can see Matt getting his prize in Argentina. And you know, there was just so much going on, yeah. And I think this, I could spend the whole afternoon just going through some of these items here. I won't do that. I'll let you do that at your leisure. I wanted to just mention a few highlights. If you could, I don't know if we can go to the other website. This one, if you click on that, so this one, yeah. Well, so this is something that we tried. Are you on Wi-Fi or wire? You're on Wi-Fi, eh? I think. Wi-Fi. Anyway, so this is something we tried with some of the data, the human organ atlas data, to try and get a 3D view coming out of this. So you see things are not so easy. Yeah, this is the data coming back. So now, if you say, click on blood vessels, yeah. So this is sort of going in the direction of what Vincent just said, is that people, you know, we want to make this data as visible and as easy to look at, that people don't have to download. This is a data set behind you which you can try and move around to see. Yeah, if you take one of them and you can just zoom in, you can also zoom in on it. And you can do sort of things. You can all go to this website. It's the Human Organ Atlas with reconstructions. You click on the tab there. And this is, let's say, a first attempt at making 3D data also easier to view. Yeah. The scientists are not, this is, I have like a wow effect when I see this, but when I show this to the scientists, the principal investigators, this wasn't good enough. Because the quality of the data coming out of the EBS is, for instance, so good that there's much more detail in there. And so to get that enhanced needs much more work, yeah. But just gives you an idea of what we're trying to do is, with this making data available, making it also something that people can explore without having even being, you know, there's this idea of having citizen scientists getting into the data, but also having scientists having look at this. Doctors could look at this and say, well, maybe I need to download this, yeah. But before you download it, it's better to have a look, yeah. So just to show you this, I think is one of the highlights that we were working on, and it's now available. So if you go back to the presentation, yeah, so I will be talking, I don't know, yeah, we've done that. And fortunately, we've had all these talks this morning, so you've heard about most of the stuff. So fair data policy we've heard about, Nexus and HDF5 as a standard metadata. Just to say that we are lucky to have a standard. Yeah? Many communities don't have a standard. We know it's painful to make the standard accepted by all or to address all techniques. But I think, you know, when I see communities that have no standard, we're much better off. Yeah? And we should you know, capitalize on that. And that's what we did inside PaNOSC. And ExPaNDS. Then the open data portal you've seen as well. I might have a few words on that. Jean-François told us about AAI. The Jupyter Lab I will talk about a little bit. Visa we've heard about. I might mention a word on that. And the PaN Learning, Andrew gave a very good talk on that. So in the next remaining time, how much time is remaining? 10 minutes. I'll just highlight a few things which I have highlighted last week in Prague, but I think no one was in Prague last week. You were, I think, at Eli, so it's okay. I could show them. So yeah, I have to put the button myself. Yes, so I recommend you go there. I also think, yes, the use cases for me was a highlight of PaNOSC, is that we managed to get 31 use cases. It's still not enough, you know, but I think we must continue. One thing I was going to ask is if we can continue adding use cases even after PaNOSC, because I think this is something that really people were talking about this morning. If we want to convince other scientists, we have to show them by examples of what we've worked on. You want to say something?
Say something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it works. Yeah, this is a call to you to stimulate your scientists, beamline scientists and users to submit such use cases, present them to us and to all the occasions that are going to happen. So user meetings, events, and so on. So it's up to all of us to feed this.
No, I think it's, well, software people will tell you use cases are essential, but even in science, use cases to make sure that they adapted to what the scientists need, we need these use cases. And I think we'll hear of some of them this afternoon from the other people. This, for me, I know I hassled Max a lot about the portal. I would every morning wake up and check it out to see, can I find this data? And there's still things we're going to improve on this, but I really think this is the start of something that is unique, first of all, in our community, but is very useful. Yeah? And I don't know of another place which is trying to which has the goal of making all photon-neutron data easily findable and accessible. So this is a unique opportunity, a unique attempt, and I think we have the bricks in there to do a lot more. And I'm very happy about all of these people, all of the individuals at these facilities who did the necessary work to make this. I mean, we're now at 7 facilities, which is a lot, compared to the fact that in the beginning there was like, do I have to do this? And we kept on pushing and pushing until we got everyone, 7 of them on board. And I think we're going to soon hit the critical number where if you're not in this list, you're going to feel like I got to be in this list. Yeah. So let's hope we get there. This is the work I just showed, and this is an example of what we want to do for a domain. So you'd have the portal is the generic portal, but we have lots of areas where we have a lot of data for a single domain. So one area that's just lying actually on our hard disk at the moment is paleontology. I think we have how many terabytes of paleontological data? But lots, 200 maybe, of very interesting, very good data. Data which even the principal investigators say, I do not have the time to analyze this. Please, someone, student, whatever, analyzes. Retiree, maybe they want to get into this, I don't know. So there, you know, what I imagine with the common data portal is we'll have multiple, like, domain-specific incarnations of this. So you could go there and say, well, I'm only interested in paleontology, and then you immediately go into a paleontological database. I mean, you restrict yourself to looking at data that has the tag paleontology with some, you know, markup which is specific to paleontology. So this we spoke about this, and I think, you know, this is where I'm very happy that we got contacted by people from DSW, Data Steward Wizard, and the work that was done filling in all these questions. So this is the work of Marjolaine, where you see all of these questions and they presented for each proposal, but we also discussed this again with Rudolf and with other people at lunch. This, you know, this is too much information. The representation has to be modified so that afterwards people save time. Let's say beamline scientists save time by sending their users to go and look at this. But I mean, I think we have something in place which allows us to improve it. Yeah. So this, I mean, you've heard a lot about H5 Web, I think, in our previous presentations. I think this is an excellent example of where an EU project has actually developed a generic tool which can have an impact and already has had an impact in a large number of communities. Because the binary format is so ubiquitous, I mean, HDF5 is widely used by geosciences, by NASA, by microscopists, by many communities. The fact that we had two people, they're sitting there developing something which was of sufficiently high quality that it could be used in many different environments has made this, I think, a real step forward. Yeah, and the thing I liked the most was when you look at this, I don't know if you know, you used to go into GitHub. On GitHub you have these stargazers, and you look at, I think there's like 80 people have said, I like the software, but you look at where they're coming from. They're coming from neuroscience, they're coming from atmospheric science, they're coming from many different areas. And just this week we got someone else who wanted to look at time series data. And, you know, there's a lot of applications out there, and we've used this money in a way which could be now benefit a lot of people. So I think developing these kind of tools is something which is part of our role as well, and we can sort of be, normally we wouldn't have the people just to be able to dedicate it only to this task for 3 years. Yeah. You know, the things that, I don't know if people also realize, one of the major achievements around Jupiter was the fact that when we started this project, we were thinking about this, started in 2016 with PaNOSC, 2017, Jupiter wasn't so widely spread as it was today. It was still in our community considered as a bit of a niche. You shouldn't go really, you know, Jupiter if you want, but it was mainly Hans's baby, or, you know, we're going to have a nice talk, I hope, from Hans later today. But Jupiter has become such a standard tool now. I think we did the right thing pushing it, yeah, and making sure that all of our facilities offer Jupiter as a service. So there again, I really like this plot also of the, which appeared in Nature. It was a survey in Nature of, I don't know how many scientists, saying which are the most important software developments ever. And I think this is quite amazing. So the one, I have to always be careful, because I sort of did a bit of Fortran, and then I moved straight away onto other languages. I was surprised by the Fortran compiler, but there are very many people, probably even in this audience, will correct me, saying Fortran was and has had a huge impact in science. Yeah, it still has. Okay, sorry, you see. And then FFC I can understand, but, you know, number 3 is Jupiter. Yeah. And you can imagine Jupiter is like the youngest kid on the block, and has had this considered as the 3rd most important software development. And so I think the work we did there, we really pushed this. Thomas, and I don't know, Thomas, who was with you, helping you to do Jupiter Slurm, or was Loic, or no? Aidan, yeah, Aidan was here. Yeah. So, you know, this was all how we enhanced this, not just saying, okay, Jupiter, we actually enhanced it to go further. And I think this is where this project has had a strong influence, or has been beneficial. I like Vincent, I love the EOSC to provide this Jupiter resource just for free, but we're not going to get there, and I think we'll talk about it later again. So this was the work, and I also saw it at ESRF, for instance. Before we started, Jupiter was a kind of clandestine service. It was done on a private basis by one of our software scientists who was offering this almost like a private service on a private server. And we turned this into a full service with, 156 people, which is almost all of ESRF scientific staff in a month. One thing we didn't carry on and started off in the first year with Hans and with Robert was working on the reproducible publications. And they were using Jupiter to do this. So Robert Roscoe, who left the project after 2 years, I think, he did some nice work on this, and I think Hans will maybe tell us where we are with this. But I think in this field, we should be looking into promoting reproducible publications, or executable publications. So if you're not sure what this means, there's a video tube that you can go and look at where Robert explains this and reproduces the results from a publication that he didn't write. VISA, you've heard a lot about VISA. I think this is also a very important tool that has changed. You know, the thing that really I enjoyed about VISA was when I spoke to Mark Johnson, who's was then the director at ILL, and he said, could I say that PaNOSC contributed to VISA? And he said, PaNOSC made VISA. And so, you know, he said for him, there was the fact that that Stuart and Jamie could work on that full time was largely through PaNOSC. Yeah? So, and also what we heard this morning from Fabio, this change of like direction. This was, I think, also a consequence. I don't think it was it was a wise decision, but it was also a consequence of COVID. So the fact that COVID came along and we were all confined and we had to provide remote analysis services, this pushed us into this direction, yeah, or promoted it. Andrew gave a great talk on the PaN learning, and I hope this has a long life ahead of it. This is another thing which has been very, let's say, stimulating for me, is trying to see how much of these outcomes are being adopted or will be adopted. And so we updated this in October this year, and there's a lot of green in there. Of course, this needs more work behind it, but I think it shows that we were on the right track, as we heard. And also helped us to develop this LEAPS data strategy. And when I spoke to the person behind the LEAPS strategy, which they're working on, Rafael Abela, I said, can we assume that all of the LEAPS facilities are behind what we're writing here? And he said 100%. Okay, it's always maybe a bit, yeah, you have to take 100% with some with a pinch of salt. But, you know, from the LEAPS management, they say, this is our strategy. Then we have to turn it into... What are my conclusions? That the effort has been, of course, essential. Without the team, it wouldn't have been possible. The work package leaders, of course, have been there running this. You know, I couldn't go to more than probably 1 or 2 other work package meetings, and even then on a very sporadic basis. So I only managed to WP2 and the PMC, and the rest was managed by the work package leaders. And of course, the members doing their work. I think we achieved all the KPIs we set out to achieve. The description of work, this Bible, has been very useful. So if you write another proposal, make sure that you put stuff in there which you can still follow 4 years down the road. Yeah. I think COVID was a challenge, but we definitely got also some things changed, but in a positive sense through COVID. Yeah. Then ExPaNDS was essential, yeah, and I didn't put it in here, but I would go on record to say it was a mistake to have 2 projects, even if financially So, and our most important achievements is, I think, fair data is on the radar of all the facilities. I know it's not there 100%. The proof from Vincent, if you look at our metadata, there is a lot, we have 1,000 different metadata, standard metadata tags, but there's still lots of data there which is not tagged properly. Yeah. So this is something, it's like an asymptote that we're tending towards. But this is where we're going. Yeah. So with that, I think is good. This is part of it, and in the future will be just known as PaN cluster, or just one community, and not always have to explain why we have two projects. And I hand the floor over to the second project. Okay, so that's not all.
Thank you very much, Andy. Are there any comments or questions for Andy? Maybe online, maybe on the room? Thomas, wait a second, I hand you the microphone so then people online can hear you, because I'm sure it's very interesting. So
very, very interesting. So how do you see PaNOSC hooking into EOSC?
When we talk about the PaN data comments, I will bring up how I see that. But in a nutshell, I'm always reminded of when we started off talking about with the other clusters, what is EOSC and what they're going to do for EOSC. And I remember Niklas Blomberg came from EOSC Life, and he said, well, EOSC Life is EOSC. EOSC is not out there. We are EOSC, and people will come to us as EOSC. So I think it's really what we provide, which we will call EOSC, and we're not relying. It's difficult, and it's still a big challenge for the other, let's say, for the EOSC project as such to provide something that's useful for us. I really think it's hard for them to do that. What we call the E-infrastructures.
Yeah. But we had a similar discussion at one of the WLCG workshops where someone was asking the same question, what actually is EOSC? And guess what Ian Bird was answering? Yeah, WLCG is EOSC. Okay. So, but I think they're all right. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. There is no EOSC out
there. Yeah. It's us, our contribution. Without us.
So with that, Patrick Fuhrmann from DESY, Head of IT at Research Innovation. Did you write it there?
Head of IT, please.
Head of IT. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Here you go.
So I took the liberty to change the title a little bit. So this is really an extremely personal view, because I know Andy, I appreciate his optimism. So I do not want to bother you with all the same slides again. I knew what he would present. And so therefore I put together slides and do not expect a very serious presentation now. Yeah. Because we have been working so greatly together. But I will highlight some of our work as well. Good. So let me first thank the people who contributed to this presentation. And I think this was one of the highlights for me, that I could ask 8 o'clock last night for contributions, and there was no problem. Juliana and Lisa were answering, and especially Kat, thank you very much. And the day before, I called Oliver, and he changed the training platform for me, just to allow me to show one of the snapshots here. Okay. That's not there. Good. Let us begin. Good. Anything else I wanted to say? No. So I have a lot of thanks to you guys, but I've been putting them at the end to make sure that I'm not interrupted by Jody up to the very end. Good. Okay, so you know this slide. We presented it a lot during all the to the symposiums we had. Most importantly is this bit here. So be ensured this is not the end. We have another 3 months for ExPaNDS, but this we need for preparing for our final review, which you guys don't have. Yeah, what we do. So this is the part where we contribute as PaN in general. So all the rest you know anyway. Good. So this is something you know as well. So this is what we are working on together. Mostly you have a little bit more work packages, but important for me is that we have all these fair activities. We have the connection to EOSC, yeah, and we have the different work packages like the training and learning platform, the WP3, which was kind of highlighted by Andy, the Organ Atlas. This is why I'm not repeating this today here. and of course our WP4 with the notebooks. And I agree with you. I remember when we started and Hans came up with the idea on Jupyter notebooks, and some colleague of mine from Petra 3 was saying, forget about this. This will die. This will die. Okay, so you can be wrong. Good. So let me focus on some highlights. So first of all, on outreach, because this outreach work package has been suffering most from the pandemic, because there were no conferences, nowhere we could go. So we actually decided to did a little bit focused outreach. Yeah. So what we did is, and this was originally only planned as a replacement for the Zoom only and cancelled conferences, but it turned out to be just fantastic. Yeah. So we contacted the different groups directly, and we focused with our material on those particular groups, whether they were students, I have an example for this, or the consultations of the facility directly. But what turned out to be really useful was the senior management involvement, and we decided to go for interviews. So why interviews? So when you talk to one of your super managers, do they listen? Very often they are busy. What you have to tell them is that we want to listen to them. Then suddenly they feel so important that they listen to you, because they ask, what is this actually about? And then you have 1 hour to explain to them, and they remember because they have to repeat this in the interview. And this is exactly what we did. On the other hand, we have on tape what they say. So we can prove you said that, not in a private discussion. So you can just go back, use enter. Okay, this is why we did a lot of interviews. When I say we, it was the team of Isabel and Kat that did this, and not only. So we started with the facilities directly, so with the IT leads and with the beamline scientist. And particularly important for us was the interview with Christian Schröer. He's the CEO of our Petra 3 beamline. So they all have different views, yeah, and it was important for us to understand all those views. Yeah. So Volker was referring a lot to leaps and lens, which we all do, and Johanna, she was not briefed. Yeah, we just did the interview with her. Yeah, and she by herself came up with the idea that it would be so useful for scientists to go to the different facilities and find the same infrastructure. So she called it the same kind of archiving system, download system, and so forth. And this was actually supporting us in our ideas. Yeah. Okay, good. And then Christian, he was more on a higher level, talking about cross sciences for his beamline. Yeah. And then, but we moved on. Then we had the very high level. I mean, from my perspective, my bosses. Okay. And so they, of course, had a lot high level ideas. So for them, it was important. Like here is so Andrew, who's now working for Florian, or the other way around. And so he was more talking about the recognition of the shared data, yeah, and of the benefits the scientists have from this, yeah. And he still has this naive idea that the benefit greatly overwhelms the risk. Well, he will learn. Good. And then, of course, the STFC, Roger, he talked about, he understands the coordination job. And I think now Andy and myself, we know the coordination is a big problem. And he was the only one mentioning this. But he mentioned as well ExPaNDS and PaNOSC, our great work. And this, of course, was a little bit of challenge. I had to get my director to talk to me, but then Isabel was very helpful in getting this organized. But he knows that he is the boss of not only photon and neutron. We have a lot of sciences at DESY. So he knows about that only the interpretation of the data is important. Yeah? And this gave us the chance to talk to him and to get our ideas into his mind. It took us a while. I think it took us 3 attempts, Isabel, to get him to say the word ExPaNDS. Yeah, he always said PaN data, so he had to stop the tape, rewind it, and again and again. And when he finally said ExPaNDS, a big machine in the background started to make shh, because we were in the hall, and then he had to do it again. Okay, stories. Similarly important is Katharina, similar to Christian Schröer, was talking about the interdisciplinary research, which is very important. Okay, good. And of course, we had a lot of fun. You cannot imagine how much I learned about making movies. Yeah, so because of the pandemic, we didn't have a chance to hire someone, so we had to do it ourselves. It was Sophie and myself. We learned a lot how to do that. But then when Isabel stepped in a year later, I was replaced by a younger copy. So unfortunately, good. Good. I had a lot of fun. So we were invited to a lot of conferences, or I was invited to promote our ideas, because they found out how far we are with our fair data. Yeah? So we are not just promoting it theoretically, but we have all these facilities in the background. So when we say fair, we really mean fair data. Yeah? So I went to the IBACRIT, I went to a LatticeNet school, and we promoted this. My friend Isabel, another Isabel, she was always saying, I'm poisoning our students with these ideas. Good. Okay, on visa, I can skip through this because you all know this. There was a presentation before. For me, it's important that that it is integrated in the facilities. On the left side it is a proposal portal, on the right side or the infrastructure. However, just to tease Jean-François a little bit, what we do at DESY now is we have this visa portal, we have the Jupyter notebooks, the visa desktop. It's connected to the same data, of course, and this data is becoming part of the data lake. So we will prove that this is working. We already have a Jupyter notebook which can talk directly to the Escape data lake, so you can steer the data location through the Jupyter notebook. Okay, good. That about that. Then this is important for me. Please support Majid. For some community, for some facilities, there is no plan B. So they need visa, and it's absolutely impossible for ILL to do this. Yeah. So we need a collaboration in order to support them. I will skip that. Yeah, so you all know this. On the training catalog, I talked to Oliver, and this is the other part of what Andrew showed an hour ago. So it is really fantastic. So you will find the workflows here, and you can click on the workflows. You will get the workflow displayed. You can choose one of those bits and pieces here, and he added in a minute. He added this training course onto Jupyter notebooks. So then you're forwarded, and then at some point, as soon as you need resources, you are in this Moodle, which Andrew talked about. Then you have to use the AI, which is the result of PaNOSC as well, and then you get in there. So you have the access to the GitHub. And unfortunately, it didn't work for me. I tried to start the servers, but I always got a timeout. So that might be fixed. Okay, good. Fair policies and self-assessment. It was already mentioned by Brian. Okay, so we did a lot of effort into making sure that the facilities understand how to assess their fairness. Because if after the projects all this ends, it was pointless. So therefore, Brian's group, have been putting together. I'm not allowed to use the word survey. A questionnaire, yeah. So he was beating me up, and I used a questionnaire on how they can do this. But this is not all. We didn't just send it around, but we trained them. We told them what it means. Yeah, each single question, and they are the people at the site which can do this again and again and again. So this was a great success. There are 27 questions, several categories, and you can take it. Unfortunately, you cannot take it. Analyze it automatically, but that can be changed. Good. Last but not least, our connection to Daphne. So we have the project coordinator here, Lisa, and she was kind enough together with Juliane to provide those slides. The NFDI is a very, very high level German project, which is, according to our BMBF, our contribution to EOSC. Yeah, we really have to keep that in mind. So we have to commit a certain amount of money to the EOSC, and part of this money is coming from NFDI. So this is a consortium-based, bigger consortium, and one part of this is Daphne, which is on photon and neutron. Okay, and Lisa was very careful in committing, but in the end, she found this sentence where she's at least committing to SciCat, but in general, this is the sentence which is important for me. So Daphne NFDI will help to sustain ExPaNDS even beyond the project. Yeah, so this is a very important statement for me, and it's now on black and blue on white, and I will come back to you, yeah, later. Good. Now, you cannot stop me now, because many thanks to all of you. I mean, this was a great collaboration, and I will really miss you, although I think I will meet Andy, yeah, again. Good. So particularly because he opened the project to us. Yeah, there were no secrets. We were invited to all the management meetings. Yeah, and we shared all the EOS symposium presentations, and this was a great experience. Although he had to suffer from my Snoopy pictures, I think. But yeah, okay, fine, good. And especially thanks to Nicoletta, because all the conferences we prepared, and she managed when we were in Prague to shock me every morning with new news about things which didn't work. And I think he only did it because he wanted to watch my face when panicking. Okay, so, okay, good. This is my last slide. Thanks a lot. And you did a very great job, I can assure you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.